The film, The Running Man, came up in conversation the other day in the context of a video about action movies, I think. And I was mentioning how much I really like that film, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I couldn't talk about it too much in detail because the point of the video at the time wasn't to talk about The Running Man specifically, but it was to talk about action films in general. But one of these days I really want to talk about The Running Man because I think it's a really good film, and it holds up actually very well indeed. There's a lot of satire about entertainment and about the nature of TV and sports and spectatorship and the like, and violence in media and how it's portrayed and how it is supported or buttressed, if you will, by a lot of varying factors, both in terms of the makers of the TV programs in question and also the people who watch it and consume it. So there's a lot there, but it's also, of course, a kind of a favorite of mine, a real favorite. I remember when it came out. I was too young to see it in the theater, but it was, because it was in the 80s, and so I was still a kid in the 80s, but there was such an aura about the film on video, because this would be a film that I would hear friends or people that I maybe were friends or semi-friends I would hear talk about and say, "Oh, have you seen The Running Man? It's such a cool film. It's so violent." And there were some pretty violent scenes that I only heard about, but there's a really violent scene about this. And there's one scene in particular that was making the rounds, as it were, among my friends and semi-friends, which was the scene around the beginning in the prison area, and with the prisoners with the bombs around their neck. And you had one scene in particular, you see the guy running and his head just explodes after he breaches the perimeter. And so that and many other scenes were like, my goodness, you actually see it happen. And then when I was able to rent the film on VHS and watch the film itself, I was really blown away by it. I didn't understand all the satirical references, and there were many references that I didn't understand, but now watching it as an adult, many years later, I see, and I'm kind of shocked at how much was there that was really intense and very, very disturbing, actually. For instance, Dynamo, and the scene at the end when he is confronting Amber in the hallway there, and there's a quick shot of him essentially walking or just above her, and she's on the floor and she's really trying to defend herself, of course, but he's this big hulking guy, and then it cuts away and then it cuts back, and then of course she's able to kill him because of his electronic suit and the sprinkler system, which is a really cool idea for a demise of a villain. But suddenly you see a shot of him without any pants, so he just wears underpants, and suddenly he dies and he's electrified, and you see the bottom half of his body with his bare legs and his underpants. And you never saw, I don't recall anyway, seeing a shot of him taking off his pants or anything like that. So I always thought, oh, that's interesting, he's died in his underpants. It was only much later that I realized the extent of that scene, and it was very disturbing, and what Dynamo was indeed, I think, planning to do, which is very unpleasant. But fortunately for Amber, she was able to escape, and the water in the sprinkler system came to her aid in a very timely way, so that was very good. But yeah, Dynamo, yes, some great lines with Dynamo and Ben Richards, right? Hey Lighthead, hey Christmas tree. I loved that line so much as a kid. I just laughed out loud when that happened. There's another one which is great, which is Laughlin, the Yaphet Kotto character, when he is confronted by Buzzsaw. And that's, of course, where he pushes Ben Richards out of the way, get out of the way, and Buzzsaw comes and attacks Laughlin. Laughlin's Yaphet Kotto character is thrown to the side there. And then, of course, Ben Richards and Buzzsaw have their great battle. And then really bloody demise, really gross stuff. It's surprising, actually. You look at it, and relatively little is shown on screen, but you see the blood splatter, and you hear the sound, and everything's turned up, and you see the reactions. That's really horrifying to think about. But anyway, so after that, there's a confrontation with Dynamo, and he's about to. Dynamo's crashed his car, and he's about to throw the spear in, but then boom, and Dynamo's got that great look, and then boom, he doesn't. And Ben Richards shows his humanity, which is of course the turning point. That's the turning point. It's very important for films to show the turning point of the characters, and not just the characters, but people and the world of the film, and the people in the film, and their turning point towards a particular character. Because as you know, up to around this point, the crowd was totally against Ben Richards. They thought he was the butcher of Bakersfield, but then suddenly they begin to turn in his favor and turn their allegiances not against him, but for him. So that was a really great point. Turning points are very, very essential. I draw your attention also to another great 80s classic, Rocky IV, and which I actually saw in the theater, by the way. I was too young to see Running Man in the theater, but I was okay to see Rocky IV in the theater. So I saw Rocky IV, and this was around the same time also, around the same period, more or less. I also saw The Golden Child. Do you remember that film with Eddie Murphy? That was a pretty, and Charles Dance, right? And that was a pretty intense film. I think I've spoken about it a little bit before, but right, I want the knife, please, and what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so Rocky IV. So like in The Running Man, the film Rocky IV also has a moment where the crowd is against Rocky, but then turns in favor of Rocky, and they start to chant Rocky, Rocky, and this is unbelievable. The crowd's for Rocky, and that was great, right? Because after all, to borrow the great line from Rocky Balboa, if I can change and you can change, everybody can change, right? So that's great. So that moment of change is really important, and it happened in The Running Man, and I thought that was really cool. So many cool things about that film. But speaking of the buzzsaw scene in Yaphet Kotto, what I really loved, even back then, was this was such a terrible moment, right? Because Yaphet Kotto, one of my favorites, so cool. Of course, you knew him in Alien, and Live and Let Die, and others. So he was such a recognizable face and such a cool, great actor. And here he was, and it was his death scene because he got mortally wounded by Buzzsaw's attack, as you know, and he covered up his wound, and he's lying there just dying, and Amber and Ben Richards are standing there helpless because they can't save his life. And what does he say? What does Yaphet Kotto say here? He says, I'm paraphrasing, but and he's such a great actor here. He said, and he uses his eyes, almost a blank stare, because he wants to show that the life is slowly being drained from him. He's like, don't let us die for nothing. Yeah. And I don't want to use the language, but he says something like, I don't want to be the only a-hole in heaven. And then he's dead, And then the music swells, that great Running Man theme, da 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 da, and it's so powerful. And Ben Richards, his eyes are open as he died. Yaphet Kotto's character. So Ben Richards closes his eyes, and it's such a powerful moment. Da 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 da. And then I love this moment. At this moment of power and the loss of a character that we've grown to love, and the music is swelling, and it is such a powerful, poignant scene in the film. It suddenly cuts to Arnold, Ben Richards, and I love his delivery of this line. It's this really powerful moment, and the music is like da 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 da, and then cuts to Ben Richards, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he says, "He saved my life. It should be me down there." Oh, wow, what great delivery. And it was just like, what did I just see? I just saw Yaphet Kotto give this great death scene, and then it was followed up by the one of the great Arnold lines delivered in such an Arnold way. "He saved my life." Oh, Oh, what a great! Oh, speaking of lines, there are so many great ones in The Running Man. I mentioned it in the video. Here's Subzero, now Plane Zero, and I remember too that scene with Subzero. Remember, and he's going like, and that was another scene that my friends and I were like, wow, I can't believe we're seeing this, because we were really into also wrestling, and so this was the type of thing where it was like wrestling and what do you call it? Like, it was like no holds barred fights and stuff. So this is a really big deal, and so this was exciting. We're getting to see this fight stuff and all these effects and everything. And that was a pretty bloody one. The Sub-Zero demise. I think probably that's, I would say, the bloodiest demise of all the villains in that, with the But that was pretty intense. And then what was I saying? So. But there are so many quotes in there. Of course, the famous one is Killian and Ben Richards' Arnold are talking via the video link, because Killian is catching on that Ben Richards is a hot property now and he's really popular, and so he wants to offer him the contract and the like. And so what right? So Ben Richards, I hope I can do it. Maybe I'll paraphrase it, but he takes the camera, right, and he's like, I'll offer you a contract, but Ben Richards refuses, right, in the ultimate Arnold Schwarzenegger-like way. He takes the camera, right, and he says, I'll tell you what I think. I'll live to see you eat that contract, but I hope you leave enough room for my fist, because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine. Ah! So I love that. I really should do, well, I hope you don't mind. Maybe I should use the camera here. So I'll live to see that, what is it? I'll live to see you eat that contract, but I hope you leave enough room for my fist, because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine. Ah! So it's like that. So I thought that was really fantastic. And, I wish I could have the guts, perhaps, to be able to use that line in real life, or maybe not. Maybe I should take that back. Maybe that's a little bit too aggressive to use in real life. But I like the spirit behind it. You know what I mean? There's a sense of real passion, for lack of a better phrase, with Arnold at that moment. I love also the way he doesn't stop for breath. Everything is essentially given in one breath. And so that's such a great movie. The Running Man. It hits the spot, yeah. And that so many great moments too. Fireball, of course. Right. So, but one of my favorites is the way that the faces look when they're going down the tunnel into the zone, like, and they have their own little look. It's not all the same. Each character, each actor has his or her own look when they zoom down the tunnel like that. And then, my goodness, that is such a cool movie. And as I say, very timely. It really works well. It's cheesy. It's all over the place, sure, and it's a lot of fun. And there are some fantastic moments in that. One of these days, I don't know. I always say this. There's so many films out there I'd love to do a live stream on. I'd love to do a live stream on The Running Man. Oh gosh. One of these days, hopefully. But